Welcome back, guys. This is Mahesh, and we just completed storage file shares, and we got to know how to work on that. Now comes the lesson fourth, the last lesson for module third, which is all about storage security. How do we ensure that our storage is secure? Because storage is a place where you keep your data, and data is a very crucial thing to take care of. If your data is compromised, a lot of challenges will appear for you, right? So securing your data which is kept within your storage account is a very great deal to do, right? So in this particular lesson, we'll see all those methods by which you can secure your data which is residing within your storage account. These are all the different topics that we are going to cover within this lesson. First of all, we'll understand what are the security aspects in a storage account on Azure, what are shared access signature. After completing SAS, I'll go back to access policies. So if you remember, in the last lesson, I have left an option which was of access policy. That is also something that I will tell you once I'm done with the shared access signature. We'll configure SAS parameters. We'll see what is the URI and SAS parameter. Then we'll have a small demonstration. I'll also show you how can you enable storage service encryption. How you can use your own keys, which are customer managed keys. What are the best practices to use shared access signature or SAS, and a demonstration of adding a storage account through SAS. All right, let's talk about storage security. What kind of security options are available when you talk about Azure storage? Azure storage has a feature of storage encryption services. This storage encryption service by default encrypts all the data which is written to Azure storage. So like I have mentioned before, whichever data you are keeping within the storage account, that data is by default encrypted by Microsoft automatically. That's one point in the security of your data. So even if somebody get hold of your data by one way or another, that data is encrypted in nature from Microsoft end, so they cannot directly access it, right? Authentication with Azure AD and RBAC. If you go to a storage account like this, or if you go to any resource for that example, every resource will have this third option as access control. Now we have not discussed access control as of now. There is a separate module for that, but remember, you can define which user can access which resource on your Azure portal through access control IAM. That is where you can control access to the people who are working on your environment. Let's suppose there are multiple people who wants access on Azure storage account. I can control them from here. I can control what kind of access do they have, what roles I want to give them. All of these things I can control from access control IAM, which will come to in the appropriate module. The second level of security you can define by defining this RBAC permission. Third kind of security is being done for data in transit. So data which is traveling, which you are uploading or which you are downloading, it is all already being secured by client side encryption or via HTTPS or via SMB 3.0. So I told you all these protocols are being used in Azure. Azure specifically says do not use HTTP. Use HTTPS every time you are trying to access any data or you are trying to upload any data, right? Use HTTPS because HTTPS is secure connection. Similarly, use SMB 3.0 or client-side encryption for that purpose. Azure Disk Encryption. In the virtual machine part where I asked you to, go through the virtual machine videos, you might have seen that virtual machine requires disks, and disks also contain data, correct? Because disks are attached to your virtual machine. So make sure your disks are also encrypted, and disks are basically stored inside a storage account. So disk encryption is being used by Azure storage account to make sure your disks are also encrypted and you do not lose your data. Then the next thing is shared access signature, which we are going to discuss in detail. Shared access signature is another form of security on Azure storage account, a granular form of security on Azure storage account, which helps you in delegating access to the appropriate people. Shared key, you can have a shared key which is an encrypted signature string, and you can also give anonymous access to container and blobs. This is something that I have shown to you when we were discussing about blob, the public access level, private, container, blob. That is what anonymous access is, right? So let's discuss shared access signature now, because this is something which was left. What is shared access signature? Shared access signature provides delegated access to resources. It grants access to client without sharing your storage account keys. Let's go back to the storage account. You remember I told you that when you want to give access to the storage account, you can simply share the key or the connection string with the user. But when you share a key or a connection string with a user, what happens? The user gets information about everything within that storage account. So he can access all the containers and all the blobs within those containers. He can access all the files, he can access all the tables, he can access all the queues. Now, this is very important to understand. Why? Because there might be certain users who just want to have access to one particular blob or one particular file or some limited number of files, but not the whole Azure storage account. Let's understand this by going to blobs. Let's say I have a test blob in here, right? Which has a private access and which should be accessible only by certain people. Within this test folder, right, I have certain blobs which I have uploaded. I'm uploading another blob in here, right? And let's suppose the blob has this picture. Okay. All right. So let's upload this one, right? So I've just uploaded this picture. Okay. Now, if I share the access key of this storage account with the person, with any user who wants access to this file only, what he will do with the access key, he can actually go to Storage Explorer and he can simply add that access key over there and he can access the whole storage account. Correct? That means he will be able to access not just this file, but this file as well, test folder as well, even my file shares as well. So how do I ensure that he only get access to this file only? Okay, you can say that you can share the URL of this. If I share the URL of this, he won't be able to access it. Why? Because this container is private, right? So how do I ensure that the user get granular access only on this file and nothing else, even though the container is private in nature, even though he doesn't have access to the entire storage account? For that kind of scenario, Microsoft created a concept of shared access signature. Shared access signature allows you to specifically get access on either a blob or a queue or a table or a file share. Specifically on whichever blob, file, table, or queue you want to give access, you can give it with the help of shared access signature. The end user who will be receiving that shared access signature can only be work on that particular uh, you can say that particular resource. He won't be able to see anything else, just that particular resource. How to do that? To understand that, you have to understand that there are two kinds of shared access signature. One is known as service based shared access signature, another one is known as account based shared access signature, which we will be discussing in the next slide. So this is the shared access signature option. When you click on this shared access signature option, it is account level shared access signature. Account level means storage account level shared access signature. When you go to any service, let's say blob service, and then you go to any blob that you have and you click on it, and then you go to generate SaaS. This is service level shared access signature. Account level is for the whole Azure account, and service level is for the individual service that you are going to. So when you go to blob and then you go to generate SaaS, that is service level shared access signature. Similarly, if you go to file, click on the file share and then click on any file that you want to share, right? And one second. Okay, 1 second. Nope. Let me click on this. It should be here somewhere. Mm-mm-mm. Give me 1 minute, guys. No, not coming from here. All right, no worries. I will find it out for you and I will show you in a while. Okay. So, anyways, let's focus on blob first. We'll come to file share later on. So, in blobs, I told you that you have when you go to a storage account, you have two levels of accesses. One is shared access signature, which is available at the account level. This is the account level shared access signature. And when you go to blob, this is the blob, and here this is the file. And when you click on when you click on this file, there comes an option of generate SaaS, which is a service level shared access signature, right? So what does this SaaS provides to us? That is the question, right? This SaaS provides us granular access to a particular blob or a particular file or a particular table or a queue, right? How do we do that? By going to these options. First of all, it asks you what kind of permission you want to give to this blob. Do you want to create this blob, or only read it, or write it, or even delete it? All those permissions you can access from here. So let's say I want to read, write, and delete over here. Okay, it says how long this shared access signature will be valid. So there will be a start time and an end time. So I say start it from 6th of July and make it valid till 8th of July. So after 8th of July, 7:17:59 p.m., it will be expired. I can also define from which particular public IP addresses it should be available, right? So that IP address you can define in here. The shared access signature will only allow access from that particular IP. Maybe you want to share this shared access signature with people coming from a specific IP only. Then you can write their IP addresses in here to further control how they access this blob. And you can also define which protocol they should connect it to, HTTP or HTTPS. And finally, to create this shared access signature, it should be signed with a key. That can be your access key 1, or that can be your access key 2. Whichever key you want to sign in it with, you can do it. Afterward, click on generate blob SaaS token and URL. So this is the blob SaaS token which has created, and this is the complete URL. Now if you'll copy this, and instead of the actual URL, if you copy the URL with the SaaS token, you can see that you will be able to see the picture. Now how it works, that is the question, right? That is something that we will understand as of now. But here you can see that you cannot always give access keys to everyone, because access keys can create problem. It will give access to the whole storage account for you. So instead of that, you can give access to the shared access signature. Shared access signature gives delegated access to resources in one or more of the Azure services. It can be blob, it can be table, it can be queue or file service. The service SaaS delegates access to a resource in just one of the storage services. So what is the difference between account SaaS and service SaaS? Account SaaS was created at the, see the difference in here. This is service SaaS. Service SaaS is meant for blob only, right? But if you go out of it, and if you go to this shared access signature, which is account level SaaS, here you can choose any of the service, not just blob. You can choose files, queues, table. You can choose what kind of resource type you want to have access on, what permissions you want to give it, and the rest of the options are same. But since this is account level shared access signature, so this provides granularity on an account level rather than going to the individual blob level or file level. That's the only difference. Okay, so I have so this is the difference between account SaaS and service SaaS. Account SaaS delegate access to resources in one or more of the Azure services. Service SaaS delegate access to a resource in just one of the storage services. It can be blob, it can be files, it can be queues, etc. Now, how do you configure SaaS parameters? So what all SaaS parameters we have? We have, you can say we have, give me a second guys, 1 second. All right guys, so what do we have in here? How do you configure the SaaS parameters? So you can do it from the portal like I've shown to you, but you can also do it through PowerShell. So PowerShell also you can create an account level SaaS or an individual service level SaaS. So if it is an account level SaaS that you want to configure, the command is new hyphen AZ storage account SaaS token. When it is at the individual service level, based upon which service you are using, if you're using blob, it will be new hyphen AZ storage blob SaaS token, otherwise file SaaS token, otherwise queue SaaS token, etc. Okay. Now let's see the URI that I copied and how does it work, right? So when I gave access to that image through the SaaS URL, I copied the whole URL in here. So you already know this first line is the actual path of that file. So if I simply copy this and if I simply try to access this file with this URL only, it won't give me access. Why? Because the container within which this blob is created, that is private in nature. But why with the whole URL, with the SaaS URL, I'm able to access it? Because it provides me with a granular access, which I wanted to have. So let's go to the URL and see what does it has. So it starts with a question mark and then it has SP written. This SP is equal to RWD. What does this mean? This means the permission that you have defined. You remember I gave 3 permission: read, write and delete. So SP stands for permissions, service permissions, which is read, write and delete. Then you have ST. What does this ST means? It means the start time where you want to start it, and this is the end time. So this is basically the start of expiry time and end of expiry time. I have also defined it. Afterwards, this is what, wait, let me write here. Afterwards, what do I have here? I have the protocol. If you remember, I have chosen the protocol which was HTTPS. So that is what is mentioned. This is what? This is the version. Which version of shared access signature you are using. And this is the signature. Signature simply means this particular you can say the SaaS token is signed by key 1. So this is the access key 1 that I have. You can also check it by going to my storage account and then going to access key, and this is basically marked with the access key 1. So that's why this key has been created in here. Okay, so this is all what is there within the shared access signature. Shared access signature contains the information which you want to give so that you can access only that particular blob. Okay, so let me just remove this thing again and let me make the signature again. Right, and with the same signature I can directly access the file, or what I can do, I can access my blob through Storage Explorer as well. So I will use this signature completely, and I will copy this. I'll go to my Storage Explorer. I will click on storage account and I will say connect to Azure Storage. With the help of what? This time use a shared access signature URI. Click on next. I will write the whole URI in here. One second. Something is missing. Okay. Let me go back. Let me copy this, and here you go. Let's go back to here. Okay. Maybe my shared access signature, I missed something while deleting it. No worries. I'll go back to my blob again and generate the shared access signature from there. That was my file. And generate SAS. Yeah, one thing you have to remember, if you are generating a SAS, make sure you copy it somewhere, because once it is generated, it will be lost. So that is one thing that you have to remember. I cannot get the same SAS again. Okay. And let me get a new one. And here is my blob SAS URL. I'll take it. I'll go to my storage account, connect to storage, shared access signature URI, next. Paste it in here. Why it is giving me error in here? 1 second. Oh, okay. Why I'm not able to do this in here? Because it's a service level SAS. Service level SAS does not gives you a list permission. To watch something, you should have list permission, right? I can only read it. That means I can only access it through the URL. So I can go over here, I can write this URL and I can only read it, right? I cannot list it inside the storage account. This list permission is available only through the shared access signature created via account level. So here, let's say I want to see blobs. So I will remove all other services. I will say within the blob I want to see container, and there I will give read as well as list permission, right? I will define a time in here and an end time over here as well, and then I will create the SAS signature. This is the SAS URL that I will copy, right? I will go to storage account, and then I will use shared access signature URI, next. Copy. Service level S access is required. Service level. Okay. I got it. Service level access should be there. You have to regenerate it again. So in terms of Storage Explorer, certain permissions are required. Why it is so? Because Storage Explorer is doing a lot of things. Storage Explorer is not just showing you the file, it is listing the files for you. It is allowing you to access that particular service, blob service. So these are required over there. So when you connect, you see only it has been mentioned that I have connected to my storage account through SAS key. Only blobs are available to me as of now. Why? Because if you go back, only the allowed service that I used in here was blob. Correct? I didn't use file, queues, and table. So the person with whom I'll be sharing this account level SAS key, that person will only be able to access blob. He will be able to read and he will be able to list. That means he will be able to see what blobs are there, right? So he is able to see what blobs are there within this, but he cannot make modifications to them or even delete them. He won't be able to do that because that permission is not allowed for this user. This user does not have that permission. Correct? So that is the difference between giving an access key and giving access on a shared access signature. Shared access signature basically restricts you to do all the work, which you can do with the help of an access key. Access key let's take an example from here. So which level gives you which kind of access? So let's understand this again with a paint. So we have three things. The first one is access keys or connection string, right? Both gives you what? Both gives you full access on storage account, correct? Then you have shared access signature, right? Shared access signature are of two types: account level shared access signature and service level shared access signature. Account level shared access signature is granular in nature, which can give access to you on all services. By services, I mean uh, blob, table, queue, and file, right? And it has a list permission which is not available in individual blobs. It is available in account level SaaS. So account level SaaS somehow is greater than service level SaaS, because service level SaaS happens at the service itself. So it gives you access on a particular blob, file, queue, and table, right? So that is how granularity of access happens on the Azure storage account. So full access, if you give access keys and connection string. If some user tells me that, okay, I don't want, let's see in which scenario you will give access keys or connection string. If you want to give full access on storage account to a user, right? Then you give access key or connection string with no expiry, or you can say IP restriction. Then also you will give access key or connection string. Account level says when users want access to particular service, i.e. complete access to either blob, table, queue, or files with some expiry time of that link and IP restriction, because that can be done, as well as protocol you can also mention. And service level SaaS when users want to access only a particular instance of blob, files, tables, or queues with, of course, IP restriction, uh, expiry time of your link, and um, you can say protocol, HTTP, HTTPS, right, which is available. Service level signature won't work in Storage Explorer. Why? Because list permission isn't there. But account level SaaS will work with Storage Explorer because it has list permission. Okay, so now you know the difference between access key and connection string, account SaaS, and service level SaaS. This is very important to understand, because only when you understand this, then you can give access to an appropriate person in an appropriate way. But if you still have questions on this, leave them within your comment section once this video is uploaded and ask me those questions. Okay. So this was the demonstration that I have shown to you for SaaS at the service level and at the account level. Now, storage service encryption. What is storage service encryption? I told you whatever data you put within your storage account that is automatically encrypted. So if you go to this encryption option, right, you can see that it has been written in here that storage service encryption protects your data at rest. Azure storage encrypts your data as it is written in our data centers and automatically decrypts for you as you access it. So whenever you are uploading something on Azure, it is actually getting encrypted and then written to Microsoft data center. I already told you about that. And when you're fetching it or downloading it, Azure automatically decrypts it for you. But sometimes what happens, sometimes you say that, okay, encryption is good, but Microsoft is using their own encryption key. I want to encrypt my data with my own keys because my data is very crucial for me. I don't want even Microsoft to encrypt it for me. In that scenario, you can click on this button, which is use your own keys, and you can keep the URI where you are keeping your keys, or you can select it from the key vault. Key Vault is another Azure service which allows you to secretly keep your keys, your secrets, your certificates without anybody accessing them. We'll talk about Key Vault later on. But the only purpose of this checkbox in here is basically when you want to encrypt your data, which is stored within your storage account by your own encryption keys. Okay. All right. So this is customer managed keys. Like I told you, you can use your own keys. You can keep those keys inside a URL. You can define that URI for those keys, or you can keep them inside Azure Key Vault. Now Azure Key Vault we'll discuss later on. It's not part of this. All right, now we have come to the best practices. What are the best practices when it comes to storage security? Always use HTTPS to create or distribute an SaaS. Remember when we created a SaaS token? In the SaaS token, there were two options: use protocol HTTP or HTTPS. Always use HTTPS because HTTPS is secure in nature. Reference stored access policies wherever possible. Okay, there was one thing that I missed, which was if you remember, in the first module there was an option of stored access policies, which I haven't shown to you because I told you that I will tell you about this by using shared access signature. So I'll be going back to blobs now, and within the blobs I'll be creating on one of the blobs that I have, and on the left hand side you see this option access policies. What are these access policies? Okay, so there is a stored access policies which are there at the individual service level. When you click on this policy, you get an identifier over here. Let's say I am going to name this as policy 1. You define a permission in here, whatever permission you want to give: read, write, create, delete, just like you see inside the SaaS. And one second. And then you have a start time and an expiry time for this, and only 3 of these options are available to you. So what is this stored access policy and how it is different from shared access signature? Okay, you might be creating a lot of shared access signature, right? And you might be giving it to individual users, right? Let's suppose you have a very big container with thousands of blobs and you have created thousands of shared access signature. You might not be managing them individually, right? In that kind of scenario, stored access policy comes into picture. Stored access policy is something which is applied at your container level, which defines till how much time a particular blob is available to every user who is accessing it and what permissions are available for that. Let's suppose there are 5 administrators who are working on storage. Everybody is creating shared access signature and distributing it to the users. Now shared access signature can be passed upon from one user to another user. Okay, I can give you my shared access signature, you can access my blob without any problem, which is something which can be compromised. If the user has given your shared access signature to someone who is not authorized to view that blob, that is a kind of a security breach. So to provide another level of security and making sure that your data is not compromised, we have access policies, stored access policies. Stored access policies is another level of policies applied at your blobs, which has a permission panel in it and it has an expiry panel in it. So it doesn't matter how it doesn't matter which permissions you give to a shared access signature and how long you want to keep the expiry time. That shared access signature permissions as well as its expiry time will be overwritten by the permission you give over here and the expiry time that you give over here, right? So let's suppose I said in a shared access signature that I want to give read permissions only. uh, and let's say I remove these two. Okay, let it be there. So when I created a shared access signature, I gave four permissions: read, create, write, and delete. Now I have done this by mistake. So what the administrator can do with the shared access, the stored access policy is he will not select this delete option. He will say you can create whichever shared access signature you want with whichever permission you want. Even delete permission you can give, but it will override this permission in here. That means even if you create a shared access signature with delete permission, here at the access policies you haven't defined any delete permission. So when the shared access signature will try to delete that block, it will be overridden by this policy, because here this policy will say that no, you are not granted delete permission. You have only granted read, create, write. It doesn't matter whether at the time of your creation you have been granted delete permission. I will override your permission because this is not required. It is very effective in the scenario where you want to create a lot of shared access signature. You do not have a control over which people will create the shared access signature and send it to other people. Here you can already define this thing in here. This is like your you can say a policy which is applied at the top level, which will override any shared access signature. So if any shared access signature is trying to add a new blob, they will not be able to do that. Okay, so this is shared access policy, and it also has a start time and an expiry time. So let's suppose your shared access signature has an expiry time 1 day more than the expiry time you give over there. It won't work after this expiry time is reached, even it has one more day inside its expiry time. Why? Because this expiry time will override the shared access signature expiry time. So this is the stored access policy that you can apply at the service level, at the blob level. Okay, so reference stored access policies wherever possible. That's the second best practice. Use near time expiration time on an ad hoc SaaS. Whenever you are creating a SaaS, make sure you do not create an expiry time too long, right? Do not make it 1 year, 2 year, or something like that. Make it as short as possible, right? Have clients automatically renew the SaaS if necessary. If the client says that my SaaS is no longer valid, they can automatically renew it. Be careful with the SaaS start time. If you have given the start time later than the current time when the user is using it, it will also not work. So let's suppose this time it is 11:44 and you have created a shared signature which will start working from 12 o'clock. So the 15 minutes user will try to access that shared access signature, it won't work, right? Be specific with the resource to be accessed. Which resources you want to give shared access signature to. Understand that your account will be built for any usage. Any kind of download, like I said, any kind of data egress will work with will actually charge you. So make sure you give access to only those blobs, those files, those tables, and those queues which you really want to give access to. Validate data written using SaaS. In SaaS permission, there is another permission which is write. When you are giving that write permission, so these permissions are very crucial, right? And delete, these permissions are crucial in nature, because when you are writing, when you're giving a write permission to someone, that user can also write back data to your files, right? So those kind of permission, be careful when you want to give it. Don't assume SaaS is always the correct choice. Maybe sometimes you also want to give the access keys, right? SaaS is just for granular access. If somebody really wants to have the whole account level permission, give them the access keys, give them the connection string. So you have to choose which one is better for which one. Choose the principle of least privilege. Give the user the access which he really wants, not what he expects. And use storage analytics to monitor your application. So storage analytics is something that we'll discuss when we'll come to the monitoring part. So this is SaaS. I have already told you how to generate a SaaS, how to connect your storage account with the SaaS token. Make sure you have Storage Explorer installed on your machine. Play with blobs, play with files, Do not touch tables and queues as of now. You won't understand it. If you are already not working on tables and queue, you won't understand it. Keep yourself with blobs and files only. Play with them, create new blobs, create shared access signature, revoke shared access signature with access policies, use access keys, connection strings, list them onto your storage account, do all kind of troubleshooting that you want. And if you have any question, leave them within the comments. So this is the end of module 3. Now what I will do in the next video, I will take the review questions of module 2nd and 3rd. So module 1 didn't have any review question. Module 2, which was of VM, and module 3, which was of Azure storage, will take review questions of them. So make sure you have completed module 1st, 2nd and 3rd before you try to give answers on the module 2nd and 3rd review questions. Because if you do not thoroughly read them, watch my videos thoroughly, if you do not watch my videos thoroughly, you won't be able to answer those questions. So before I begin with those lab and review questions, make sure you complete my videos. Only then you will be able to understand it. Okay, and do some self study from your end as well if you want to clear the examination. Thank you guys, that's all from my end. I'll start the next module.